Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to another edition of the Steelers Q&A. We are back here on a Sunday night, ready to talk all things Pittsburgh Steelers and really try to figure out what do we do next? What's next after the Steelers' wild weekend of moves, trades, and acquisitions? It's been crazy. Maybe the craziest week of my Steeler fandom, and I am just excited to talk about it with all of you here on the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. Right now, it's just me, but here soon, my buddy Andrew Wilbar is going to join me. We're going to talk what's next. We're going to get a little bit of a look at the rest of free agency and the draft, and we're going to, talk about what you want to talk about as well. So go ahead and start throwing your questions in. We'll start getting to those. Hey, Gavin, I see you like the hat. Yeah, I had to wear it. Rocking the Steelers down here, rocking Ohio State up here because our boy, Justin Fields, is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it is super exciting for multiple reasons. The biggest reason to me is that this is one of my favorite college players of all time, and he's coming to my team, my pro team. That doesn't happen very often, especially at the quarterback position, and you get a chance now to see what can the Steelers do with this guy. So I'm excited to see about how this works. And I think that there are just so many ways that the Steelers could go with this, and how they handle it is going to define not just this year, but the next few years. Daniel Red, I am doing good. He says, "What's happening, Jerome?" If for those who don't get to hear me on the Let's Ride podcast with Jeff Hartman on Fridays, that is what he calls me, Jeremy Jerome Betts, and I hope that you get a chance to listen to that. So check that out every Friday. Check out this last episode. We kind of previewed a little bit of what was going down this weekend, and then everything went crazy. So it was quite interesting, and a weekend that will be unforgettable for Steelers fans for a long time. There's a lot of questions already coming in. I like it. It's looking good. We're going to start talking about those in just a second. But first, got to bring in my buddy, Andrew Wilbar. Andrew, you're here, and we're going to talk some Steelers. How you doing, man?
I am doing well. All the Steelers news has put me in a very good mood as of late, and we've got a ton to talk about.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, because the Pittsburgh Steelers added an Ohio State stud to the team, and I think you're a fan of this move as well. No, get that Maze out of here. Get that Maze out of here. But hey, are you excited about this? I think, you mentioned on the Breaking News podcast that it was a move that you were very excited about. I think kind of just before we get to the questions, overwhelming thoughts based on Russell Wilson signs, Kenny Pickett trade, then the trade for Justin Fields. Are the Steelers better off now than they were? Would you have liked them to handle the Kenny Pickett situation better? What's your overall thought on the whole situation?
If there is any Steelers fan out there that could have imagined a way that this could have worked out better, kudos to you, because I don't know that that's possible. This was perfect in every way, shape, or form. Who cares about what the Steelers got in compensation for Kenny Pickett? We got a guy who, in many eyes, just a few months ago was worthy of a first-round draft pick for a sixth-round draft pick that maybe becomes a fourth. That's absolutely incredible. Not even in this draft, in a future draft. And on top of that, you also get a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback who's won a Super Bowl. So that combined, the Steelers get two quarterbacks that just 2 years ago were projected to be top 12 NFL quarterbacks, both of them. You get them combined for $4.5 million in 2023, and you only give up a sixth-round pick on top of that. That's just hard to fathom.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible, really. And when you talk about the magic that we've seen from Omar Khan in just his short career as the lead guy in the Steelers front office, as the general manager, you have to think that he was just waiting for his opportunity to break free of the Colbert regime, if you will. And he's been doing that nonstop. And I think the other thing to consider here is that I think that Art Rooney came out early this year talking about they're over the playoff losing, right? They're over losing in the playoffs. Mike Tomlin and Mike Tomlin only is making the offensive coordinator hire. Our sources inside the building really are saying that this is Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan's team right now. There's not a lot of input on the moves being made from the big dog, Art Rooney II. And I think that is exactly what needs to happen here. And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be better off for it. We're already seeing that. I would say that the Steelers quarterback room is way better than it was just 2 weeks ago, and on track to becoming something potentially special too, when you consider the future upside as well as the present upside. And I still have a lot of faith in what Russell Wilson might be able to bring to the table. I think that he can be a very good quarterback still. And as long as he plays within himself and within the system and allows that to kind of dictate how he plays the game, like his days in Seattle, I think that is a prospect that looks really good for this team, especially when you consider what they already do on defense and the weapons that they have. And there's going to be some questions here. We'll talk about Mike Williams, who is rumored to be heading to the Steelers for a visit. We'll talk about him in a little bit as well, but the Steelers can keep adding here. Andrew, let's start getting to some of these questions, and we'll just start from the top, from the first one. Vinny Aguikun says, what does this Kenny news say about his character? I'll open it up to you. Let's not pile on too much here, but were you disappointed with how Kenny Pickett handled the situation, or do you understand it more or less?
I can understand it if he was truly told that he was going to be the guy going into this year. Obviously, you have that expectation after a rough year of injuries, after just all the turmoil that surrounded the Steelers offensive coordinator position this past year. I believe that if he was told he was going to go in as the starter, that's a little bit different situation. We don't really know that for sure. I don't get any sense that the Steelers said they were going to bring in competition. And the Steelers didn't say Russell Wilson was for sure the starter. They said that he was the one that was going to be in position to be the starter. That didn't mean Kenny Pickett wouldn't have an opportunity to dethrone him. But the Steelers wanted that competition in the room. And he's like, I don't want to be a part of that. So congratulations. You get to go to a team where you have absolutely no chance of starting. And because of it, the Steelers end up so much better off. In my opinion, you're getting a much better quarterback. And I would say the Steelers have two quarterbacks on the roster that are better than any one that the Steelers had last year. And they did this all within 1 week, Jeremy. 1 week. Yeah. Absolutely incredible working by Omar Khan.
Absolutely. And one of the things we talked about to start our look at the draft and the offseason process here is how if you're going into this draft, you want to turn some of those late round picks into day 1, day 2 picks, right? What did the Steelers do? They've throughout this process, they've eliminated their 7th round pick and moved up around, which it helps a little bit. And then they've also taken a 4th round pick and turned it into a 3rd round pick. I mean, you've just given yourself another day 2 pick where the meat and potatoes of this draft class is. And I think that is fantastic maneuvering on the draft side of things. And also you've upgraded your roster exponentially, potentially. I like that. Over the course of the last couple days. And what a whirlwind it really has been. I was a little bit disappointed in Kenny Pickett. I thought that he would definitely have more of a competitor spirit in him, but I think that he felt, whether it's true or not, he felt that promises were broken, and that is the reason he asked out, and he did it at the expense of potentially being able to outplay Russell Wilson, because there is a world where Russell Wilson's just not a good quarterback anymore, and it's proven throughout the offseason process here. If that is the case, then Kenny Pickett's going to be wishing he stayed in Pittsburgh. He really is. He's going to be looking at the outside looking into this. And if Justin Fields is starting week 1, it's going to be because Russell Wilson did not live up to what the Steelers are expecting of him. And that would mean that Kenny Pickett probably had a good shot of starting. So that's going to be something to watch here. And it'll be tough for old KP8 if he doesn't, if he starts to see something like that happen and he's sitting behind Jalen Hurts and company for the foreseeable future. Let's hop on another question here. The rumor is from multiple sources that Mike Williams has his visit scheduled with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going to go see a couple teams beforehand. I think it's the Jets and the Panthers that he's going to go see beforehand. I would say this, Afton asks, what's your opinion on Mike Williams? Thanks for the question, Afton. I'm going to say that I think he would be a redundant addition to this offense. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I just think that he's a lesser George Pickens at this point in his career. I think that that's the type of ball player he is, the vertical X receiver that can stretch the field and go after those jump balls, make plays in the red zone. That's George Pickens. And so if you're bringing in Mike Williams as an insurance policy for George Pickens getting hurt, then that makes sense if you can get him cheap. But I just don't see that the contract will probably match that type of expectation, especially if there's a competition here for his services. So I don't know that I don't hate the player. I've always liked Mike Williams. He just can't stay on the field. That's the other thing here. But what do you think, Andrew? Is that kind of how you feel, that this would be a kind of a redundant hire, if you will? Or is this a guy that you would like to see on the Steelers?
Yeah, I don't like the signing of Mike Williams if that does come to fruition. I would prefer Tyler Boyd, only because at least with Boyd, you're getting someone who has the versatility to play inside and out. Williams doesn't have much versatility at all. He's not the greatest route runner, and there's just not a whole lot you can do with a guy like that who is injury prone. And I understand that the system that Arthur Smith wants to implant is physical receivers on the outside. But when you look at, and I think we mentioned this on the Breaking News podcast yesterday with Jeff and Bradley, when Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator in 2021 for Tennessee, and you could go back to 2020 as well, and many different instances during Arthur Smith's tenure there or in other places, the number 2 receiver wasn't really used that much. A.J. Brown was the number 1 wide receiver. Who was the number 2 in that offense? Was it Julio Jones? Was it Nick Westbrook-Akeen? Was it Khalif Raymond? I mean, you had guys that would have a catch or two here and there. But it was A.J. Brown, run, A.J. Brown, run, A.J. Brown, A.J. Brown. That's what it is. The scheme is to just use the other receivers to get the number 1 wide receiver open and find ways to get the number 1 wide receiver the ball. And this offense is going to be George Pickens. I think George Pickens is in place to get a ton of targets this upcoming season. I think that I'm not saying the number 2 receiver is not important in this offense, and the Steelers obviously prioritize depth at receiver. They always have, at least during the Mike Tomlin tenure. I do think the Steelers are going to add more talent there, but I wouldn't freak out like, oh, the Steelers have to draft one in the first round. The Steelers have to go after Mike Williams because he's the best name available. I don't know that, and with a guy who's that injury prone, a guy who's probably still going to demand a decent dollar on the market, I'd rather Tyler Boyd, who's comes across to me as a little bit more of a safe bet, maybe not quite as high upside. But I don't think you need the upside when you have a George Pickens. Get a guy who can work underneath, a guy who's going to be physical, and a guy who's mature, going to be a great leader in the locker room for these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's such a, the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver room is not a place where you got to panic. George Pickens is leading the way here. You've got some role-playing talent already on the roster. And then I think you've got Pat Freiermuth too. Let's just call him what he is. He's going to be a pass catcher in this offense. And yeah, they'll use him in line a little bit, but I would assume that he's going to be more in that slot type role, that Y type role, and get out in space more that way, just because of his skill set and how Arthur Smith wants to play football. Now, there's going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets. You're going to have Darnell Washington on the field a lot, but I do think Pat Freiermuth ends up being the split end, more or less, if you will, playing that type of role for this team. And if he becomes your second or third option in the passing game, that's not a problem to me, Andrew. I don't know if that's a problem to you, but I think that he's got that type of upside. And if you give him a chance to show it, that he could be a top 3 or 4 tight end in this league. I think we've seen flashes of that as a pass catcher, and that it could definitely be something that we could see out of him. So I would say that no need to panic, no need to just go get the biggest name available, like you're saying. Let's just stay calm, stay focused about this, and handle it in a way that doesn't hurt you in the long run to fixing the offensive line or getting help in the defensive secondary or along the defensive line. Let's see. We've got a super chat here. I'm going to throw this one up from Tarkus Box, $2. Thank you. Does Denver owe Russ more money in 2025? Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, they do owe him money in 2025. I don't know how that works if the Steelers were to sign him to an extension after this season, if that would come off their books or if they'd owe him that, and whatever the Steelers decide to pay him in 2025 would just come out of what they owe him again. And then the Steelers would be on for his full contract amount, whatever they're paying him in 2026. I'm not sure how all that works. Do you know how all that works? And I know Dave Schofield's in the chat. Maybe he can help us out too.
I was just going to say, if Dave Schofield's in the chat still, I'm hoping that he will give us the correct insight on this. My understanding was that the guaranteed money, it was going to be kind of like this year. The Steelers would have to pay at least the minimum for him to remain on the roster. But anything above that, Denver's still going to end up having to pay up to at least the $40 million or whatever he's due next year, which somewhere near $40 million again, because they owed him about 80 and 39 of it is this year. So it's got to be around that $40 million mark still. But I'm not positive on that, so I don't want to say for sure.
Okay. Dave says they're locked into cap money in 2025. So it's going to go against their cap, but I guess they're not paying him that cash then. So that would mean that the Steelers would be on for whatever they sign him for. And so basically Russell Wilson is getting all his money from Denver this year. It's just hitting or he's going to have gotten all of his money from Denver by the end of this year. He's just going to be going against their cap again next year. So whatever the Steelers would sign him to after this season would be on the Steelers, and they would need to pay him accordingly. Whether if they were going to re-sign him, that probably means he's giving you top 15 quarterback play, top 10 quarterback play. That would make sense to me. And in that case, you're paying him $30 million probably. So that's what would make sense to me. And it's going to be a decision for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So thank you, Tarkus, for that question. Let's pull up another one here. Harvey Stone says, will the Steelers release their number 1 jersey for Justin Fields? Will they let him wear number 1? I would think so. Maybe they give him 11 though. I don't know. Is there anybody on the roster 11 right now? I don't think so.
Thinking through all the wide receivers. If it is, it would be a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, but I can't think of one for sure.
I don't think anybody took Claypool's 11.
No.
So maybe they give him 11, maybe they give him 1. I don't know. We'll see. But I would say they wouldn't be stingy. I mean, they're going to let Patrick Queen wear 6. So I think maybe that the cat's out of the bag on that one now, and you just kind of let them wear the number that they want to wear. Okay, let's see here. We got Corey Eckenroth, who has recently joined the editorial staff here at the Steel Curtain Network. So go read his stuff at steelcurtainnetwork.com. Excuse me. Corey says 22 positions left, 7 selections in the draft. Where do they go to fill in the rest? There's a lot left to build in this roster, obviously. And I think, Andrew, as we dive into the draft on the Steelers Fix, I think we can kind of highlight this here because I think it's pretty obvious where the weak areas still are and what you would need to do in the draft. So I'll open the floor to you here. Where do you see the Steelers going, especially early in the draft, to kind of fill their more obvious holes right now?
Well, center wouldn't surprise me early on. I don't know that I see Jackson Powers-Johnson as a great fit in Pittsburgh. It just doesn't seem to fit with the other guys on the offensive line. I think if you're going to take a center early, I would wait until day 2 to take a Zach Frazier or Cedric Van Pran. I'd be okay with either of those guys. I think both those guys are really, really good. Obviously, Shannon's in the live chat. Huge fan of Zach Frazier. I like him as well. Van Pran's been my guy all along, so he's obviously the guy I want. And you can get him in the 3rd round too. So I absolutely love that idea. Barton, I see more as a guard in the NFL. So you have center, right tackle. Yeah. In my personal opinion, if Talisa Puaga somehow falls to 20, you run to the podium and take that pick at right tackle. Talisa Puaga.
Yeah.
If you somehow get him, there's going to be a tackle that drops. We're just trying to figure out which one it is. Maybe Olu Fashanu drops. There's talks about that. One of these tackles is more than likely going to drop. With the quarterbacks getting pushed up the board, someone's going to drop. So the Steelers are going to get someone good at a position of need, whether it be there or center. And then I would wait until day 2. The Steelers have proven time and time again they don't need to go for round 1 wide receivers. Now, I do think it's possible, and everything the Steelers have done almost makes me think that maybe there is something to the Rome Odunze rumors. And I have a mock draft that's going to be coming out this week on SteelCurtainNetwork.com, FansFirstSports.com. And in the first round, I'm going to give a hint. The Steelers are making a move up for Rome Odunze. You'll have to check it out for the compensation as well as the round 2 and the day 2 picks for the Steelers. I'm gonna try to make this one 3 rounds long, so you have a little bit more to digest than just round 1. So I'm willing to give that away, but make sure you check that out because there's going to be guys that are going to fall that we don't expect. It happens every year.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if J.C. Latham could fall at the right tackle spot. He doesn't have the athleticism of some of his counterparts at right tackle in the class. He's just a big dude. I mean, and he's good. He's a good player, but I wonder if some of the athletic traits of some of his classmates at the tackle position kind of bump him down the board. I wouldn't be surprised if Amarius Mims goes ahead of JC Latham at this point. It's a big possibility to me that he goes pretty early, top 15 pick at this point. I know a lot of teams had him pegged for the Steelers at 20-ish, that type of range. We'll see how that plays out. Obviously, but I do think that offensive tackle is a big time need. I wouldn't rule out them adding a linebacker in like the 3rd round. If a guy like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is still there in the 3rd round, I could see them pulling the trigger on a guy like that. I think they do kind of steer towards the offense though still in the early portion of the draft. So thank you, Corey, for the fantastic question. Let's go ahead and pull up our other super chat here. Biggie Bronco, $10. Denver took a $53 million cap hit this year. Next year, they're taking a $20 million cap hit. All Russell Wilson's money will be paid by the end of this year. Okay, so kind of what we were saying is that he's paid in full by the Broncos at the end of this year, just counting against their cap next year. So the Steelers would have to pony up, no pun intended, for the money that they would owe him in 2025 and beyond if they decide to make him a long-term option here. Okay, before we get to some other questions, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to answer more questions. And before we do that, though, I want to talk a little bit more about Justin Fields and where he fits moving forward on this team. Don't go anywhere. If you are on the live show right now, we're not going anywhere. But if you're listening on audio, we're just going to be right back after this short break. All right, welcome back to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. Jeremy Betts and Andrew Wilbar here together, bringing the Steelers Fix to you on a Sunday night. We are going to be doing an audio Steelers Fix show, though, on Tuesdays, so don't miss that separate show. Let's go back to Justin Fields here, because one thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the interesting dynamic that the Steelers have put themselves in by adding Justin Fields. I know we're all excited about the move. I'm excited about the move. But in a way, there is some trickiness to all this, because this is a guy going into his 4th year, right? So you, as the Steelers, are looking at a 5th-year option for him, and that's a decent-sized chunk of money. And if you think that Russell Wilson is potentially your guy beyond this year, then bringing in Justin Fields is kind of just your insurance policy. It's not really a play for your future. Because you're not going to sign both of them to future deals, right? Next offseason. So I guess where I come down on this is like, if you're Pittsburgh, then you could have just stuck with Russell Wilson, not gone after Justin Fields, and picked up a cheap backup like a Joshua Dobbs or something like that. That's a clear-cut backup quarterback. That's all he's ever going to be, is a backup quarterback. You didn't go that route yet. They might still do that. You went for Justin Fields, which is your upside play. Is this all just as an insurance policy, Andrew, or do they think that this guy could be a part of their future? Because it sounds like they want to extend Russell Wilson if he plays halfway decent this year.
I don't know if the Steelers exactly know how it's going to work out. They just know that they have 2 good options and 2 options that could potentially work out really well. That doesn't mean that either of them necessarily will. I would say that unless Russell Wilson gets back to playing almost all pro level football, I would highly doubt the Steelers would give him a long-term deal over a Justin Fields, because even if you don't get to see Fields in that much game action this year, assuming Russell Wilson's healthy, you will still get to see his development in practice. You'll be able to see if he can handle it. Maybe you bring him in on another 1-year prove-it deal where he is the guy who is the starter. Maybe competition will be brought in with him being the one in place as the starter. And I think that the Fields fit may not be the greatest for Arthur Smith's scheme, but the fit for him to be sitting under Russell Wilson is excellent. Bradley Locker mentioned it yesterday. Being able to sit under Russell Wilson, a guy who's willing to take risks down the field, a guy who is sometimes a little reckless with his body, but he knows how to find a way to still somehow stay on the field, stay healthy, and be durable. And he knows what shots to take and what shots not to take. That's something that Justin Fields can really learn from Russell Wilson. And we'll, let the chips fall where they may. The Steelers know they have options now.
Yeah, for sure. And I did like what Dave Schofield here says. It's like you're getting him super cheap right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if Russell Wilson is cooked, not letting Russ cook, but if he's cooked, then you've got a guy who most definitely is not cooked from an athleticism standpoint, and then you can see what he can offer you down the road. One thing I like about Justin Fields, and what the Steelers probably like too, is that the dude's only 25 years old. I mean, even if you're just starting with him in 2025 after moving on from Russell Wilson, I think that you've got a chance here to have a quarterback for a long time if he works out. So I get that it's like, again, it's kind of a zero downside move for the Steelers. The only problem it gives you next year is a good one, is if Justin Fields or if Russell Wilson's clearly cooked and you can go with Justin Fields, or if Russell Wilson had a really good season and you won a playoff game and you made it to the conference championship or the divisional round, it just seems like it's a win-win for the Steelers either way. So I understand it. It just does give you the opportunity for a tough choice down the road, and the Steelers will have to make that. Also, the potential for somebody to scoop him out from under you if you do not pick up his 5th-year option this year and somebody wants to pay him a bigger salary than you're wanting to in 2025. So that would be your risk by not picking up the 5th-year option this year. One more super chat here from Biggie Bronco. Another $10. Thank you, sir. Denver took. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the same one. My bad. It's this one here that we're looking at. If the competition between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields is close at the end of training camp, who would you guys like to see start, especially if Justin Fields may end up being your future? I think that's an easy answer, Andrew. I think it's Justin Fields. If it's close, if it's a competition at all by the end of it and Justin Fields is close, then I think it's Justin Fields, right? And you got to get him on the field and see what he can do for you.
I think it is going to be close because people have Justin Fields has this stigma around the league that he is just a mobile guy who was part of the problem in Chicago. He was not part of the problem in Chicago. I go to school in Illinois. I see a lot of Chicago's games. And one thing that I can say specifically is that he was not the problem. You watch those games, there's always some bust on the offensive line. There was some bust down the field. The receiver ran the wrong route. He didn't have any help at all. So why, like David mentioned a minute ago, when you're getting him for that cheap, why wouldn't you make that move? And when you have this much upside, Justin Fields was trending toward being a top 12 NFL quarterback just a year ago.
Yeah.
And he wasn't fully healthy for most of last year. Let's not forget that. When he was fully healthy, he was still a fantastic quarterback. He may not have always had the numbers, but he made clutch throws. He knew when to take off with it. He was making smart decisions with the football. That was only for a couple games of the year. And I saw a lot of Chicago's games this past year. Justin Fields has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I truly believe that. I truly do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when he was at his healthiest, that was when he had the back-to-back 4-touchdown games, right? In like mid-early portion of the season, where he just lit it up in back-to-back weeks. Maybe it was 4 and 3. I can't remember. I thought it was like 4 and 4 back-to-back. one in prime time against, I think, the Commanders. I don't know. My memory's jumbled, but I think that he had good a really good showing when he was at his healthiest last year. And I think it is something that the Steelers will consider because of the age factor and the future factor. And you can't miss out on the guy who can be your quarterback for the next 12 years for a guy who's maybe got 2 to 3 good years left
Exactly.
in him. You know what I mean? So, and then at that point, Russ would have to decide, does he want to be the backup in Pittsburgh or does he want to go somewhere else and try one more time? So we'll see how that plays out. Let's transition over for the remainder of the show to some of the wide receiver talk here. Wade Johnson 1 says Adonai Mitchell from Texas is the missing piece to this offense. Andrew, is this a sentiment you would share, or is this another George Pickens clone that would have a it would be kind of hard to see them working well in the same offense as they're basically the same player?
Adonai Mitchell has good body control, but the thing that, and I'm reading the live chat. Most of you that are putting in messages, I'm paying attention to them, and I like the different perspectives that are being given. But the Steelers don't need to draft a wide receiver in the first round. This draft is so deep. There are going to be guys that we don't even expect to fall that are going to fall. It happens every year. The positions that are the deepest, there's going to be guys that fall further than they should. They're going to fall through the cracks. You can get a guy on day 2. I don't know if Ricky Pearsall is going to be there. He would be an excellent addition. I'm going to mention one name that isn't being mentioned at all, but I think it's going to go a lot higher than what people think. And that's Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky. You're going to see him in this mock draft. If he falls to pick 51, he is a guy that fits Arthur Smith's system. He's thickly built. He's very compact, but he's physical at the point. He's a physical right off the line of scrimmage. He's not afraid to block. He's not afraid to do the dirty work. And he's very aggressive coming across the middle of the field. He can break tackles in the open field. He can do a little bit of everything. Very much built like kind of a Brandon Ayuk type receiver. He's a guy I really like. And of course, one guy that we mentioned before, Xavier Legette. This guy would be awesome. I see a lot of A.J. Brown and Xavier Legette. I would love to see him. It just would make too much sense. I know that someone just mentioned in the live chat about Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice. Maybe not quite as high upside, but a guy who's going to be a good maybe wide receiver 3 or 4. You're going to probably give him in the 4th or 5th round of the draft. There's just so many. Don't draft a wide receiver in the first round. Just don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. I think the higher upside plays are offensive tackle, cornerback, potentially. Those are where I would go in the first round over wide receiver because of that depth. I mean, you've got guys like Roman Wilson who will just be sitting there in the second round, maybe the third round, depending on how these guys go quickly, but or what order they go in. Xavier Legette, to me, I see A.J. Brown, but I also see some Deebo Samuel. Do you see that as well? Kind of that run after catch ability, the size. I think that he's a very physical player. Do you see some of Deebo Samuel in him as well?
Yeah, Legette has the vision. I think that's a big part of Samuel's game, which allows him to line up at running back, receiver, line up kind of wherever.
Yeah.
He has that field vision, which is incredible. I don't know if Legette's is quite to that level, but if you're talking about just body type and overall skill set in the open field, I think there are some similarities there, especially coming across the field. He's not your typical 225-pound receiver that's just physical across the line. I mean, there's a guy, Jonathan Mingo, last year, 220 pounds, 6'1", who may do something for Carolina. I think he's in their future, maybe as a wide receiver 2 for them. But he's got to clean up the drops. He's got some major flaws in his game, but there was nothing that was super, super explosive about his game. And man, this guy's that's what you see in Legette. You can just see the difference between this wide receiver class and last year's wide receiver class. You're getting the same guy at the same position as what Carolina got Mingo last year. You can get Xavier Legette. In my opinion, you're getting a much better wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a lot of upside. And, a lot of people knock him because his only good year was really this last year. I kind of give him the benefit of the doubt there that he found himself last year. And Spencer Rattler played a big role in that as well because he finally got good, consistent quarterback play, which he wasn't getting in previous years too. So that made a difference to me as well. So let's see here. We got, okay. As much as I would love to see this, ain't no way, right? Eric Weidman says trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr. That would be, you send the farm and maybe, I don't know, somebody else's farm too. You might have to send a couple farms to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. because I don't think he's going outside the top 5 picks in this draft. And to move up from 20 to 5, that's a king's ransom and then some. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe if Kyler Murray trips over his dog, tears his Achilles, and decides that he's going to medically retire from football, and the Cardinals need a quarterback, and all of a sudden they just fall in love with Justin Fields and are willing to make a move for him. Maybe the Steelers can work some magic there with Omar Khan. Other than that, I don't see it happening. I love Marvin Harrison Jr., and that says a lot coming from a Michigan fan. But I think this guy's on a different level. He is my highest rated player in this draft for a reason. This guy's legit, going to be a number 1 receiver right off the bat. But there's just some things that just are not reasonable that the Steelers can't afford to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd love to see it, but it would take a miracle. Okay, Brian Brown. We've been talking about this. So what are the chances the Steelers take a wide receiver with the first pick? I'd say higher than I would like them to be, and maybe you'd agree with that. I think that there's a chance that is the case. In the end, I do want them to kind of just go best player available, but I do think focusing in on the offensive line, kind of whoever the best offensive lineman available is at tackle or center would be kind of my play there. I would love it, Andrew, if the Steelers found a way to trade back with a team to like 26, 27, 28 in that range. I would be okay with taking Zach Frazier there potentially if I got maybe an early 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick in return for that, to be able to move back, add some more picks, and keep addressing some of these needs. To me, that is best case scenario for the Steelers in that realm. Maybe one of the tackles lasts that long as well. Maybe a Tyler Guyton's still there, and you could get a guy like that potentially late in that 1st round. But adding picks should be a priority, I think, in this draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. The draft is entirely about maximizing value. And if the player that you have rated higher is a guy that you can get later on because nobody else perceives him to be that way. I mean, Zach Frazier, I've not seen in 1 first-round mock draft. That doesn't mean he can't go first round. The mock drafts don't mean anything in the eyes of the NFL. I highly doubt they do. But it is a good showing that, okay, Zach Frazier may be a little bit rich at 20. That doesn't mean he's not worth pick 20. But the draft is about maximizing value. You win the draft by getting the most out of every single pick. And if you can move back a few spots, gain some additional capital to be able to move around the draft board and still get the player that you have higher rated on it, whether the rest of the league sees it as a reach or not, you can still take him. I would feel much more comfortable about Zach Frazier at 26 or 27 than I would at pick 20. I have a late 1st round grade on him. I think he's a great center. He's going to be a really good center in the league for years to come. He's a very safe pick. But I also like Cedric Van Pran, who you can get in the 3rd round. And it's about, can the Steelers get more value out of it? But I'm not gonna be saying crying on draft day. The Steelers trade back 7 spots, get an extra 3rd round pick and a future 4th round pick, and still get Zach Frazier, who could be the next Steelers Pro Bowl center for a while. I'm not going to complain with that. But pick 20, maybe you could have tried to move back a little bit and get a little bit more out of that pick than just settling. That sounds like a very Kevin Colbert-ish move, if I must say.
Yeah, for sure. Let me pull this one up because I think it applies to what we're talking about here. Gucci Finesse says who y'all want at 20. Powers is his suggestion here. So let me ask you this, Andrew. Let's answer it this way. If the Steelers do stick and pick at 20, who's your ideal selection for them there?
Talisa Fuaga or Marius Mims, whichever tackle falls. Okay. I think one of those guys could fall.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the big tackles. That's my thought on that. If they stick and pick at 20, then I would want it to be one of those tackles. So, yes, good question there. Thank you for that one. Afton Forward gives us $2. Thank you for that. Who are some good 3-4 round wide receivers? So, right at that transition from day 2 to day 3, Andrew, you're the draft guy. Just start firing some names at us here.
I'm going to give you a couple guys. Bub Means from Pittsburgh. If you're a Pitt fan in the live chat, you may be familiar with that name. This guy, he's a go-getter. He can go up and get the ball. He's physical. You got a lot of these 6'2", 6'3" guys that aren't afraid to go up and fight for the football, and teams are going to like that. He is one guy that I'm really high on. Another guy that could be in that 3rd round range is Jermaine Burton from Alabama. He's one of the rare entities at Alabama that is not getting pushed up draft boards just because of some inconsistency. Wasn't always involved as much in the offense as what you would have liked to have seen. Jermaine Burton is a guy that could be available at that point in the draft. I don't know for sure, but it's someone that it's definitely, I would think he's going to be on the Steelers' radar for sure. And, there's several other small school receivers. Maybe we'll get into them a little bit on the draft show, which make sure you go and check that out on FFSN. But one other name in the actual name, forgive me, is slipping me right now. Wide receiver at the combine Jalen McMillan from Washington.
Okay, yeah.
Mekhi Polk and Jalen McMillan are getting very low love compared to what Rome Odunze is getting. Jalen McMillan, if not for the injury this past season, is probably going late first, early second round, and you could get him in that third, fourth round range. He's the guy, not the flashiest guy, but if you want a guy who's just going to catch the ball, he's going to fight, he's going to play bigger than his size, he's the guy you want. He looks like a Steelers wide receiver.
Yep. Andrew, I'll tell you this right now. Outside of those top 3 wide receivers, Jalen McMillan is my favorite tape to watch because he does everything. And I've got an article coming out on the SteelCurtainNetwork.com about the wide receivers in the draft that the Steelers could eye on each day of the draft. And I've got him on there because I 100% agree with you. He is a workman-like receiver that can do a little bit of everything, but is actually more athletically gifted than you might imagine next when you consider that he was playing next to Rome Odunze, who's just a freak. This guy is sub 4.5 speed and 6'1", 200 pounds. I mean, that's good size, right? And he's got some versatility. He's kind of your do-it-all type Z receiver. I would really like to have him in the room. I think he'd be a great fit. A guy I like a little later, Andrew, I don't know if you've done a lot of tape dogging on Javon Baker out of UCF. I really like Baker. I think he's a good player too. I think that he's got some size, some athleticism, and can kind of make plays down the field. And he can also, if I'm not mistaken, he's the guy that can move inside as well. If you need some more speed on the outside, he's moved inside to the slot a few times in his college tape as well. Really like him. Let's see here. Last question here before we go. With free agency still in play here, the Steelers bringing in Mike Williams. A lot of talk that they might be interested in Tyler Boyd. The Chiefs went out and got Marquise Brown over the weekend. I feel like Tyler Boyd is out for the Chiefs. So it's probably now just between the Steelers and the Jets for Boyd. Who would you prefer of these two guys? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd, 100%.
Yeah, I agree. I think even if Tyler Boyd has lost a step from maybe 2-3 years ago, I think he's more versatile. He is a healthier player. It doesn't have all the injury concerns of a Mike Williams. That would be my play as well.
One name I want to throw out there. I'm not necessarily a proponent of this, but I could see it happening because of the ties to Arthur Smith. And you've heard some rumors about it, and that's wide receiver Corey Davis, who was recently reinstated by the NFL. I don't know if the Steelers would go that direction, but he does have ties to Arthur Smith, and one of his best seasons came under Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. So he's a guy that I would keep an eye on, is someone who's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle over the last 2 or 3 years, but a guy who, when he was at his peak for that year or two, was a really good NFL receiver, and maybe he still has some left in the tank. He hasn't been overly used over the last couple of years. I guess that's one positive out of his whole situation. So,
yeah, absolutely. Hey, we appreciate all of you tuning in. I think this might be the biggest show that I've ever done for the Steelers Q&A. Almost 500 of you at one point, so we really appreciate all of you tuning in. Thank you so much. You're the reason that we do this for the fans, to get you all the information on the Steelers and the NFL that we can. You can see, let's see here. I'm going to try to hide this comment here. Here we go. All right. You can see right there. Oh, let me see my camera. Right there. At the Bets 93. Give me a follow, okay? Andrew doesn't have X, or I would tell you to follow him. But follow me right there. I'm close. I'm close to 500 followers. Let's get me to 500 followers, everybody. I'm not pushing myself. I'm really not. But it would be really cool to get to 500 followers and keep giving you guys as much Steelers content as we can. I post all my shows, all my articles on my X profile. So give me a follow there at the Bets 93 THEBETZ 93. Andrew, any final thoughts? Anything coming up for you on the website? Other shows? Plug the draft show that we've been doing because we got to get people listening to that show as well.
Steelers NFL draft, or not just Steelers, but we have the NFL draft preview show on FFSN. Also, by the way, in case you didn't know, FFSN has a YouTube channel as well. So make sure you're going over and subscribing to them as well. We have great content coming out there. I believe you can catch one of Jeremy and my shows. Actually, you can catch one of the video versions over there as well. So make sure you go and check that out. And also the draft show that comes out usually on Wednesdays, but we have some different divisions we're going to be doing. We're going to have a couple coming out over the next few weeks leading up to the draft. And then obviously the Steelers Fix on Tuesdays. We have the big board coming up, which by the way, if you are in the live chat, I'm going to put my email out there. I'm going to put, Jeremy, is it possible to type an email into the live chat on my end?
Be.
I'm going to try putting mine in the live chat.
I can do it too, probably. So.
Okay. Send me an email. I'm going to try to put mine in there. I believe I can. Yes. I'm going to send mine in the chat. If it doesn't send, AndrewWilbur11@gmail.com. If you didn't go back and listen to this later. Send me an email if you want to contribute to that. We're looking for more contributors. We want to be able to get through each position before the draft. And it does take a lot of volunteer work, but you can have an opportunity to show your writing skills and also show your knowledge about the draft and draft prospects. So we'd love you to be a part of it. Just contact me, and we'd love to get you on board with that and do some scouting reports. And I think you'd really enjoy it.
All right, perfect, Andrew. Thank you for doing that. Hey, like and subscribe this channel. Go over to the FFSN YouTube channel as well. Like and subscribe there. Make sure you get all of the news and notes about our latest videos and podcasts. That's going to do it for us here on the Steelers Q&A. That was what's next after the Steelers Wild Weekend. We'll keep talking about that and more here on the Steel Curtain Network.